So, Aoife, welcome to Writers on Ice, and
That's
I'm sorry
right.
to hear about your ankle.
Yeah, sprained ankle from the launch.
So, a launch injury.
A launch injury.
Are those common? So, with publicity, have you done a launch for each of your books? Because this wonderful book is your fourth book.
Yep.
Did you do a launch for the first one?
Yeah, I've done launches for all but the third one, and that was really because of COVID. That didn't happen. So each of them, and probably fair to say, each of us got bigger and, you want to say better, but I think at the start, I had no clue. I don't think I'd ever been to anyone else's launch, and you don't really get much direction from anyone because launches can be so varied, and they're sort of, you're just on your own doing your own thing, and that felt very weird. I had zero idea what I was doing.
It's better with children's books. With children's books, you know there's going to be cupcakes, there's going to be kids, it's going to be a bit of a party.
Exactly, that's definitely.
But
you need
these
cupcakes.
books,
Yep.
It's actually really for the author and a little bit for the independent bookshop selling the book.
Yeah.
But beyond that,
It's probably also nice, probably more nice to actually have a moment, because it can, in a weird way, when you launch a book, and you'd know this too, it sort of happens without you. And so it's nice to actually mark the start of it being out there, and for all your sort of family and friends kind of to get together and to celebrate that moment with you, because if you don't celebrate it, what you'll tend to find in this industry, no one's going to really celebrate it. Yeah. I think one of the things that I've learned is to define success yourself as something you can control, because once you put it out in the marketplace, you can't control that. That said, when I was just talking to my publisher, you know, it's a month in, numbers are back, and this has sold better than any of the others. My second book didn't do as well, but since then it's been a slow build. So not to say there's no runaway success, it's been kind of a progressing up each time. And weirdly, for this first time, I have felt, which I've had other authors sort of talk to me about who are much further along than me, that you actually start to feel that you do have an audience there. And only really in this fourth book have I felt that people that have got in contact with me to say, I've read all your books and I'm waiting for this one. So that's the first sort of time I felt that, for sure. Cozy's kind of, it's a complicated term, because for some people cozy kind of means very gentle, and I wouldn't describe it as that, but on the funny front, yes.
because you do have to work to a genre a bit, don't you? To the reader expectation. So a crime novel would typically start with a body, whereas a cozy tends to start with a scene that sets up a character. Would you say that's true?
I mean, yes, but that said, only one of my books starts with a body in the first chapter.
Yeah.
So I would say I don't hold on to that as a rule of thumb. But that said, most crime novels will kind of start at the central point. But for me, for example, my first book, it wasn't any murders until halfway through.
No.
So,
you knew
but
there was a dark secret.
absolutely, yeah. There was stuff going on. There was hints, and I think so. She's quite explicit that murders are coming, but I often will do things that are not necessarily conventional.
Oh, Tania just asked a question about thrillers.
All right.
Yeah.
And the difference between crime fiction and a thriller. Look, I think there's a huge amount of overlap, and it's a bit eye beholder kind of stuff. Psychological thriller, I mean, maybe you would be talking about perhaps a little bit more first person, and so you're right in the mind of someone as well. I think crime fiction would also, there'd be a suggestion about that there's a formal investigation part of it. So that would involve maybe the police or the detective. So you've actually got investigation, that's the basis of your story. But there are many that embrace bits of both on that. And when you're with, like me, I've definitely had police as characters, but I've never had really a protagonist that it's their official job to go and investigate this. So my books probably in particular would borrow a little bit of both.
How much do you know about the criminal process, procedure, police procedure, and how do you keep it light enough that you don't get bogged down in the detail, but keep it authentic?
I guess I don't know a huge amount of it.
Yeah.
Obviously, I know a fair bit more on my fourth book than I did on my first book. I have got a legal background, so I do understand some parts of it. And that means I do know quite a few lawyers that I've chatted to. I've also chatted to police, but usually what I do is it's actually Sarah Bailey described it as a process of fiction, fact, and finesse, which is you write your story, and this is Sarah and I did an event just recently where she said this. I like that. That is how I work. You write your story, then you work out what you don't know, what you need to know. You go find it, and then you try and mirror up the two. And then, and sometimes really you're going for what's plausible, or sometimes you're going for exact. But what I tend to find when I talk to professionals in the area is, one, it's always fascinating. Like, I love doing it, which is why I don't do it that often, because you could just spend your whole day chatting to people about their jobs. But two, what I'm often get interested in is the normal aspect of their job. So for example, I was talking to a friend who's a teacher, because one of the protagonists in here is a teacher, and she said something about, oh God, in the staff room, all they talk about is air fryers. And you go, bingo, absolutely, that's going in the book, because that feels so real. And you go, of course they are. And even when I talk to the policewoman that I have talked to for at least 3 of my books now, we were talking more about what happens when you go out to a new station, which she had done a lot, and you're going in there as a supervisor, and you've got to work out, and the thing is, what are you trying to do? You're trying to learn everyone's names. You're trying to work out who's motivated, who's not motivated. How do I motivate them? Exactly. And you think all of that is, you go, of course, and it's those moments of normalcy that I at least think brings a reality to the book far more than
And also, that's a really lovely story arc in that book, is Billy improving.
Yes.
and sort of slipping back a little bit. He's not discreet, and but he's also very brave. So he's that's a lot of warmth in that, and I really liked that aspect of it. And so, are your books, your first book, was it in any way autobiographical?
It was autobiographical in the sense that I gave her, it's set in 1990 when I went to uni, and the main character goes to uni. The uni looks like my uni.
Yeah, it felt like a real place.
Yeah, it was a reaction to, I think often my writing is a bit of a reaction to kind of the set norms, and I was just a bit bored of all the university ones that are all beautiful sandstones and all the rest of it, where most people's unis are, especially in Australia, kind of built in the 1950s, and there's a lot of...
It's in the country?
Well, ANU is kind of a rurally kind of bush setting, which is lovely, but I wanted to play against, your classic, a bit English sandstone university fancy buildings. And so...
but you still captured that bit where all these people come and they try and reinvent themselves.
Oh, 100%.
And they're like 18, 19.
Yeah, that's a classic growing up. Oh, I think everybody does.
I decided I would wear hats. Ridiculous. I was going to be the hat girl. I kept getting sat on and they didn't suit me.
Hello.
So, I've just got 3 questions.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask you as a bookseller, because you're a bookseller as well.
I am.
Yep. At
Fairfield Books.
Fairfield Books. Yes. So, what books are selling at the moment? What should I write if I wanted it to sell?
The problem is by the time you finish writing it, and certainly by the time you finish publishing it, the book world will have moved on. And so I would say, to be honest, don't write what's the big at the moment because of that. But it's a thing called romantasy is quite big, which is romance fantasy. So romance is having a moment, fantasy is having a moment. But basically I would say to wannabe writers is really write what you're interested in, because often an individual kind of just their own take on something can lift it. But I would advise that if you think you've got a really great story that's deeply depressing and about very dark topics, now is not the time to go approach a publisher. So it is a bit more lighthearted. I think people are finding the world a bit much, and so sort of escapist reads, and that would be why romantasy is having a moment. Crime fiction, of course, always a good seller.
With crime fiction, it's not a flooded market now, do you think? It just seems like there's so much crime.
Absolutely. Australian crime fiction has had a real moment. We'd look at like the success of someone like Jane Harper's The Dry, which spearheaded sort of a wave of Australian crime fiction overseas, of which a lot of other authors can be appreciative of, including me. Definitely I got overseas deals because of Jane leading the way. And probably that moment has gone to some extent, and it'll be onto a focus onto somewhere else. So I think a lot of people head into crime fiction because that looked like to be the place to go. And so there could be a bit of getting back to a natural equilibrium. But that said, crime fiction always one of the most popular genres, and a perennial good seller. So a good crime fiction book will always do reasonably well. And you're probably not saying the same thing about, say, something like literary fiction at the moment.
No, never.
Yeah, literary fiction, tough market.
So now, what do you see as the next wave coming through?
I think fiction will have to deal with a few things. One is there's definitely a push on for more diverse authors and more diverse protagonists. And so we definitely see an expansion of that market. So hearing from different voices, that's going to continue. Books that deal with technology, I think, I was thinking the other day of one of probably the things that shook crime fiction up a lot was trying to deal with the ramifications of the mobile phone, where everybody's got an encyclopedia basically in their pocket and can find out a lot of things all the time. And so I think with the moves in technology with AI and things like that, that's going to be something that fiction will have to grapple with. And I think we probably won't know quite how that's going to pan out, but that is going to be a huge issue. I think AI itself is going to be a huge issue and disrupt the industry, so we're going to have to work out that.
So the AI conversation is interesting, and I know a lot of people are really scared. And I read that article by Richard Flanagan, who was really worried about AI. And I'm thinking, Richard, AI is never going to write a book like you. I don't know, I don't feel scared.
I would be scared. I think even the discussion about that Meta was thinking about buying Simon & Schuster purely to feed that all to their AI machine. I know publishers are already receiving AI-generated books that aren't good enough to be published.
But they couldn't be good enough. You know, it can only regurgitate what's been told before, and it's always going to be lacking that human quality. So.
But I suspect there's lots of parts of the market that aren't looking for something new, but are looking for something. If you look at genre fiction, and then you have AI can generate a book, you know, what would have taken a real author six months at the very quickest, a lot longer, you know, the way we write our books, and can do it on demand a bit, then you might need a human editor or a human element along the way. But I think it's going to be a major disruption. They can't write like Richard Flanagan, but you are seeing definitely big name authors, and probably more in the genre space, like someone like Stephen King, being very vocal, because you could feed a lot of Stephen King books into it and get an approximation of a Stephen King. Well, I saw this article that basically was asking people in the industry what they thought AI could do and when. And about 6 months ago, they thought one of the questions was, when can AI write a New York Times bestseller? And they said 2050, which would be your view of it. We're ages away from it. But 6 months later, they got asked and they said they put it down to 2030. So it's not really that it's 2030, it's the fact that that jumped 20 years closer to us. And what's the next jump? And I mean, I think one of the things is we won't see disruption straight away because they're going to go for more profitable areas of the economy to head to. But when AI would like to be a horse-circling rider, they'll head our way.
I think I might have made this up, but what someone told me, there's a rule on Amazon that you're only allowed to publish like 3 books a day.
Oh, right, okay.
So, that's like,
God, I've been doing this wrong.
Dear me. So the 5 emojis.
Oh, okay.
You're going to need to get your phone out.
Sorry. Well, see, when you don't use emojis, you don't care. about it. Okay, well, I'm fine to say what they are. So my emojis are police car, biscuit, dancer, swimmer, envelope.
Oh, the biscuit. I wonder what the biscuit is.
I can,
I know. I know.
Well, I can tell you that's at the start.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
do I have to explain them, or that's just?
No, that's okay.
all right,
That's okay.
It's an emoji mystery.
It is an
Read
emoji
on.
mystery, yes.
Yep. Brilliant.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.